Hello, Guardian. Welcome back to another episode of the Hello Guardian podcast. I am your host, Adoc.
And I'm Mcadley.
So, Mcadley, we've been gone for a bit of time. Well, at least from the podcast, not so much from the game, right?
Yeah, it's been a few months now. We at the very end of the season, I think it was the hunt, we got into the raid that was brought on with Beyond Light. We never actually produced that one there. At that time, Destiny was kind of in a little bit of a lull period, and we did kind of fall off a little bit then, but we've been back in for the season, and we wanted to kind of come back and really discuss with what we've been experiencing and just kind of share our experiences with you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's been a lot of new things, especially in this season, and we'll obviously get to it, that we really enjoy, and we've been putting a lot of hours into Destiny. It's probably the most time I've put in the good recent months. I think last season was a little bit of a letdown. I always feel like whenever you have a new expansion and then there's a season that comes out too, they kind of, shortchange you a little bit because they're banking on, you investing a lot of time into the actual, content that they've, released and cost you money,
In terms of the expansion, it was kind of, they were throwing two different pieces of content at you. And in my opinion, it was a little confusing, just to kind of play through what Beyond Light brought us and introducing you into Season of the Hunt with Aldrin coming back as the Crow and
that was insane.
He played. That was cool, and it was cool to kind of, I don't know if you've ever went back and watched videos of who Aldrin was and what he meant to the whole entire Destiny universe prior to Destiny 2, but for us, in terms of the veteran players, it brought a lot of nostalgia, and that big old scene after inside Forsaken where you actually kill Prince Aldrin, bringing him back as a character years later is kind of hooked me into the story a little bit more. And then Hunt led into Chosen, which is this current season now, and he's played a bigger role. So I think that coming from what Beyond Light brought us and Season of the Hunt, it was kind of wishy-washy in a way where I felt the expansion brought that new superpower, which was stasis, to us, and you kind of got stasis, and once that was done, I didn't really follow it, in my opinion, like going through the story that Beyond Light brought. I didn't really like, it was kind of like a brand new story, but it was really quick and small, and so I think they could have kept that for a season maybe, and then kind of carried on into the Hunt, but
yeah.
I definitely think this season is a lot better, and it's a lot more story driven, and I'm digging it pretty thoroughly, actually.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the season, because I know the last thing that we left off, we were talking about the raid, and kind of like building up the raid team. We've obviously done the raid, we've done it multiple times. I'm still waiting on the rocket launcher, but going through everything so far in terms of this season for Season of the Chosen, there's a couple things we wanted to hit on. One of them that I'm sure you can agree with is just the story in and of itself of what they've been able to do from week to week. There's obviously been some refreshes to how the game looks, to how challenges look, to some vendor updates, but the story, the week to week stuff was really interesting to me.
It's my favorite part of this, where each week in the very beginning, I'll kind of explain just very, very briefly, and then I kind of want even you to kind of give your input, because this is, in my opinion, one of the first big story details that you've even experienced. I think right before quarantine, March 2020, and a little bit prior to that is when you got into Destiny.
Right.
That's when they brought this season that had with the Vex. I actually forget the name of it. That's how memorable it was that I forgot the name of the season, but this season, they're bringing in a bunch of storylines in the very beginning, where every week you go to the Helm, which is a new social space, and you hear kind of exchanges with Saint 14. Actually, not Saint 14. I'm sorry, Osiris, and Osiris with the Crow, and then you also hear Saladin kind of put his input there as well. So that story built. And then Zavala, he also plays a big role, actually. He plays one of the bigger roles, because he has to prove his worth to Empress Keitel, which is in relation to Callus. So Keitel is holding us kind of up to a challenge, and we have to prove ourselves throughout the season that we are able to, she's trying to get us to side with the Cabal, and then if we side with the Cabal, I think Bracchus Zavala is what his name would have been. So we proved our worth at the very end of the season, and kind of went through the season in the new Battleground activity, where You fight waves of Cabal, and through that, you kind of prove your worth. And then at the very end of the season, it culminated. In terms of the story right now, I think we have 3 or 4 weeks left of the season, but the actual story is completed. And it culminated with the Proving Ground strike. And that was actually pretty cool because at the very end, you fought the leader and you proved your worth, and we prevailed. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
What did you think of it?
That was a nice little addition. Not just the story content itself, but having a new strike just like drop on us. I don't know if that was in the roadmap for this season when it was originally released. Okay, so maybe I just didn't pay enough attention to it, but it was just nice to see a new strike, and it was actually a lot of fun too. Like just loading into the strike the very first time, just playing it normal. Like, wow, this is like it's action packed.
Yeah, and it had
the
meaning.
Entire strike. Yeah. And I think that was the really cool part, is that you were able to tie seasonal content into a strike. You know, a lot of the things that we've gotten, or the strikes that we play, whether it's Arms Dealer or, you know, or whatever, it's all related to older content. So to have a new strike that's related to content that we're, you know, doing it in the moment, it's helping build lore. It keeps you more invested and tied to the story, and you feel more inclined of, yeah, I need to do these challenges, or I need to do these weekly things so I can progress this story along. So it's a really nice way, and I'm sure it takes a lot of effort on Bungie's end to kind of create this stuff, but in terms of what's been created so far from a story perspective, I think they've knocked it out of the park. I think this is probably the best season that I've played, because I remember starting Destiny, you know, a year ago around this time, and I played probably one of the worst seasons of Destiny. So it's really, I've really come full circle of going, you know, seeing what a really good season looks like. And this season hasn't disappointed. There's been a lot of great stuff. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the story.
And in terms of that, now your expectations, or our expectations, are set pretty high for what's next.
Right, because you know you can do it.
Yeah, now you know that they can do it, and they're doing it from home. Now, how much of this was previously created, because they're known for creating content in bulk and kind of, you know, piecing it together now throughout a seasonal model. I'm kind of interested in what's next, just because this did set up a pretty good segue to what the next season could potentially be going into the Vault of Glass. So a lot of people were hoping that we'd get Venus back, and it doesn't sound like we're going to be getting Venus back as a whole. According to, I think, their French PR guy through Bungie, he hinted towards we're just getting that and not Venus. So he did already come out and kind of explain that. So a little bit of a letdown. I'd love to go back to Venus as a whole, but that doesn't kind of rule that out yet. I just want to see. I'm curious if they're just revamping the raid, keeping all the old audio files, or is this going to have a meaning? I know I watch a guy named Evade. I think I dropped his name a couple of times through this podcast, and he thinks that Praedyth, who was one of the original Guardian fire teams that went into the Vault of Glass originally, he's caught in a time loop right now. So his belief is this next entire season is going to be us trying to get Praedyth out of this time loop, which he's been lost in it for over 7 years of our time right now, all the way back to the original Vault of Glass in D1. So another piece of nostalgia, kind of like the Crow coming back. From Prince Aldrin to the Crow, are we going to be able to revive Praedyth and get him out? Kind of like we did Saint 14, actually. He was dead, according to the lore, up until that point. So, pretty cool to look into. It's going to be new to you. So, what's your thoughts on the Vault of Glass coming back, man?
I'm excited
about it.
Yeah, briefly talked about it, but no, I'm just excited just to get new content. I think for me, I'm in a position that anything that's new, you know, it's new to me. So for playing a new raid, or a raid that's going to change a little bit, I'm curious to see, because obviously, you know, you guys and the people that we tend to play with, you guys have done the original raid. So I'm kind of curious to see what has changed, if there's any, I don't know, if the encounters are the same or if it's a little bit different. I'm interested to see, because I know one of the talks, or, you know, one of the things people are interested in, and are you bringing back certain weapons, like exotic weapons, like I think Vex Mythoclast that came from that raid. Is that what dropped from it?
Yeah, and it was one of the most rare drops of the game. Like, if you're frustrated getting a drop now, you've never played Vault of Glass and trying to get Vex Mythoclast, because that's I got it within the first couple of months, but I've had buddies up until years not get it. So
wow, yeah, I'm really curious to see, obviously the raid, but also like the weapons as well, just to kind of see what unique metas are created, and I'm always for that stuff. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. But
It'll be cool. Yeah, I want to get some of that old content back, man. We'll see.
yeah. Speaking of which, and this segues perfectly into it. Speaking of weapons, a lot of new weapons this season. A lot of new weapons have been added just to the game in itself, into trials, part of the seasonal stuff that we've seen. Is there anything in particular that like has caught your interest? You already know my answer. Well, it's one of two answers of guns, but
well, it's very similar. It's very similar just because it's one of those weapons that we've been chasing for a little bit, and I just recently got a really good PvE roll for it, and I feel your pain because I know we've played a ton of Gambit.
Yep.
Out of the ordinary, to be honest with you, if we didn't have good old bottom dollar in the Gambit loot pool, probably wouldn't be playing Gambit as much, mixed with the good old seasonal challenges that came with Season of the Chosen this season. I played a lot of Fortnite back in the day, and to have those weekly challenges are a really cool touch. Makes you want to come back into it. But to get back onto the weapons part, I'd say my favorites so far would have to be PvE. Right now, I do have that PvE bottom dollar roll. But also, I did get my Adept Palindrome that I like using in PvP right now. It's not my number one go-to, but I did get the Adept Pally from the Proving Grounds Grandmaster last week or 2 weeks ago. Came with Rampage Outlaw, or actually Rampage Quick Draw and Handling Masterwork. So that was one of my favorite weapons. Kind of a little nostalgic touch as well. Now, I know I'd like to talk a little bit about nostalgia with you guys, but that's one of my favorites. And on top of it, the exotic of Dead Man's Tale. I know when that dropped from that mission, we used that, or I know that I used that personally for multiple weeks straight without taking it off. So I'd say bottom dollar mixed with Pally. I'm leaving one out intentionally because, I want you to kind of... But those are my favorites so far. And, man, I hope without having sunsetting anymore, I hope these weapons never fade away or, nerfed into the ground per se.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm interested in seeing, and we can obviously touch on that at some point or getting later into next season to kind of have more talking points because these, updates and changes will take effect in the next season, the season of Redacted. We'll know what that looks like, and we'll kind of be able to touch on that. But for me, man, besides bottom dollar, obviously it's a great way for me to play Gambit because I tend to not have a reason to play Gambit unless I'm trying to go for Pinnacle stuff. But I'm still hunting for a God roll that's got a 0.02 chance to drop the way that I want to. But besides that, man, my Ignis Hammer roll from Trials, dude, that gun it's become a favorite of mine, and I don't know what I'm gonna do when it gets nerfed. It's such a fun gun. The roll that I have, it's got hammer forged, accurized rounds, rapid hit, and rampage with a range masterwork. It's literally like one of the best guns that I can have. And now with the changes to quick draw now being replaced with surplus, the roll that I have, it's perfect. I don't have to adjust anything about what I'm doing or have to play with the new perk, which is kind of cool. I think they've done a lot of interesting things this season, and I hope they do more of this where they have weapons that you want to chase after that are tied to certain things. Like I still haven't gotten that rocket launcher yet from playing Vanguard Strikes. But for Gambit, like the Gambit weapon is bottom dollar. The one for Crucible is the Frozen Orbit, the sniper rifle. That's a good one too if you can get a good roll. I'm still waiting on a good roll on that one. But I just like how they're enticing you to play these games. I think it's smart on their part to allow people to kind of week over week saying, hey, I don't have this roll yet. I need to go back in and farm it. So it adds longevity to the game and to the season, and it doesn't make you feel like you're not doing this for a reason. You're obviously grinding this stuff out because you want this roll.
And now you're keeping it on top of it too.
Yeah, now there's and the sunsetting. We totally missed that too. Sunsetting, that was huge.
Yeah, that's a huge discussion. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later just because now we're starting to see the effects of what anti-sunsetting is doing. I know the rocket launcher that you were talking about, though, was Royal Entry.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of people are trying to get lasting impressions on it, as well as auto-loading holster, too. Yeah, I had to go into my collections really quick because it was bothering me that you said it and I wanted to say the name, but I couldn't
That's
exactly
the thing. I
remember
don't
the
even
name.
know the name because I don't even have
Yeah.
one. I'm like, I don't even, I need it. But yeah, just to kind of keep everything streamlined. I know we have a lot of things to touch on, but just to kind of like a reintroduction to us and to who we
Mhm.
are. In case you don't know, I am a novice Destiny player. I don't even know if I could say that anymore. I've logged over 1,000 hours into the
No,
game.
it's a year now. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in the veteran status now, man.
yeah, so I was once a novice, but there's still obviously new things, that I haven't experienced in the game, but it's kind of dwindling down little by little. But yeah, I wanted to go ahead and give those impressions of how I felt of the season so far. I think we have a lot of great things coming down the pipeline, and I'm excited to create more content like this. I really enjoy talking about the game. I love playing the game, and I hope y'all enjoy listening just as much as we love talking about it.
And it's something about this game that I've always been kind of passionate. It's one of the games I've played the longest in my entire life. A lot of people play WoW and have played WoW since it's dropped years ago, early 2000s and such. But it's one of those games that I'm very passionate about because kind of like what you just said, like you've put 1,000 hours in already by yourself in the last year, and again, kind of like you always say, not to brag, and it's not really a flex or anything, but just over 7 years, you think about 1,000 hours in that year, and you've played a lot. Every Tuesday we used to have a group that we'd log on and play, and I'd also play pretty religiously off of that schedule as well. So we do have a passion for this. In terms of the lull, there was just a very dry lull period at the end of Season of the Hunt around the raid time, and COVID things happened, and it was just weird. But I think the vibe is back. Expect a little bit more from us. But right before we go, I just want to kind of ask you just one more question in terms of that. So far throughout the season, and I'll kind of go first, but just to kind of give you an example, what are you, out of the time that you've played Destiny, I guess, out of this most season, kind of like most proud of? Like, what did you accomplish in this season, if this is even a good enough question? But I'll kind of go first just because I know this may sound kind of petty to a lot, but in terms of my first gilded title, I got my first gilded dredgen. That was my first seal that I actually acquired back when seals were a thing. Was I got dredgen, and I know with the amount of Gambit we've played over this last season, that was probably going to be the most obvious one that I would acquire. So having that gold dredgen kind of going around looks a little badass. And then I know I just acquired another seal for Chosen. I actually got the seasonal seal as well. So I'd say outside of inventory-wise, I'd say that's probably one of my prouder accomplishments over these last 8 to 9 weeks, whatever it is, 12 weeks, whatever the season is.
I think for me, I don't have the best luck when it comes to getting drops on rolls for guns that I want. But there's been 3. I got a God roll palindrome, not an adept, just a normal one. My God roll Ignis hammer, and most recently we just went flawless last week with a cool dude that we met. We were playing with, super chill dude, Bastion lover.
Oh my god, he was crazy with it too. He
so
was
good.
insane.
Yeah, he's so good. I ended up getting, I've now learned it's now a God roll Astral Horizon adept. It's got surplus. It's got celerity, which is now getting a buff we'll talk more about, with accurized and the handling masterwork. So I've gotten some really good rolls on things, and that's probably been the biggest accomplishment for me so far, because it's like I've gotten the roll and it's like, cool, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's good. We're good.
Yeah, especially the flawless runs. We finally, after weeks of kind of doing it, I know we didn't play as much as we could have towards it, but
right.
Finally getting it together. I know we've been prior, but it was just kind of a feel-good feeling after 2 weeks of sweatiness, and then finally saying that, it was legit. So
yeah, it was good, man. It feels good to kind of play that stuff and say, oh, okay, cool. Like I can do it. I can at least roll with some people,
It's definitely attainable. You just got to have a solid crew together, and, obviously persistence is key. But
that's it.
Yeah. So, guys, I appreciate you guys listening. If you guys want to drop us any kind of comments on the YouTube videos and such, is this shorter session a little bit easier to hear? Or do you like the longer sessions? We want your feedback on this stuff. We want more community activity. That's what kind of keeps us going, is the engagement. So just you listening alone, I appreciate, and hope you guys the best. And till next time.
See you guys.